Today on CityCast Nashville, some local lawmakers are calling the recent statewide redistricting a return to Jim Crow. So we are diving into the role Nashville played in shaping the civil rights movement and asking ourselves, why doesn't our city have a civil rights museum? Author and local historian Betsy Phillips joins us to talk about the 1960 Nashville sit-ins, nonviolent resistance training, and the everyday Nashvillians whose stories risk being forgotten. It's Tuesday, May 19th. I'm Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Betsy Phillips, back at CityCast Nashville. It's my favorite time.
Thank you for having me. I love coming and visiting with you.
All right. Well, today we're talking about something that we hope that all Nashvillians know of, but I'm learning very quickly that they don't. So that is why you're here. We're going to give a really quick history lesson and then get into why we really should have a civil rights museum. So for starters, what happened in Nashville in 1960 that helped shape the national civil rights movement?
Well, actually, I think you could say that it started roughly in 1958 because Reverend Kelly Miller Smith, who was the pastor at First Baptist downtown, was friends with Martin Luther King. And so he started the Nashville Christian Leadership Council. They started thinking about, like, what can we do to help push integration here in Nashville? So they started doing workshops and training, really getting folks ready. Students all over the South had been wanting to do some kind of mass action that would force the country's hand on issues of civil rights. So, anything from we just want to be able to eat at the same restaurants as everybody else, to we want to be able to use the same swimming pools, to we'd like to be able to vote. So a wide swath of basically just trying to undo years of Jim Crow laws. And the people here in Nashville were studying under Reverend James Lawson to do nonviolent protests. They had started in late 59 doing test runs of what it was going to be like if they went into these downtown businesses and tried to integrate the lunch counters.
So no one else had done this type of protesting?
No, not yet. It was kind of in the air that this might be a thing that would be effective, but no one had kind of tried it yet. So on February 13th, 1960, we start having these protests downtown. The kids would go in, they would sit at the lunch counters or restaurants and try to get served and see what happened. And it usually turned some kind of violent, and all of the people who were violent would get to go home and the protesters would get arrested. It went on from February until May, and it ended up desegregating Nashville's lunch counters. But the reason that it's so important is that there are so many enormous civil rights figures, like for the whole South, who started here in Nashville.
Can you give us some of those names?
So names that people are going to recognize, like Diane Nash, she was a Fisk student. James Lawson obviously was at the Vanderbilt Divinity School. John Lewis, C.T. Vivian, Bernard Lafayette, and James Bevel. These are all people who went on to real national prominence and worked very closely with King, on all kinds of stuff throughout the South. And then we also had, I think, a kind of overlooked tier of local activists who kept the movement going here. Now, Black people in Nashville were more easily able to vote than Black people in other parts of the South. So there weren't those kinds of marches for voting or that kind of stuff that were happening here. People here were the foot soldiers of those other protests. They had this knowledge that they had gained, this training they had gained. We had freedom riders came out of here. People who marched at Selma came from here. Pretty much anything where there were civil rights protests. There were people from Nashville involved, some of whom we know very well as a city, like Rip Patton or Kwame Lillard. There are people who have recently passed, but who, if you've lived here for any bit of time, you probably, before they passed, got to meet them, which is just so wild and cool, right?
Yes. And one of those who just passed is Frankie Mae Keeling Henry. So, Betsy, can you tell us about her?
She became a sit-in protester and then went on to be a freedom rider, but she had no intention of doing that stuff. She got roped into being a part of the sit-ins by Diane Nash, who she thought was a white woman. She's on the bus and she was making her transfer downtown. And to hear her tell the story, this beautiful white woman came up to her and said, "You have to come have dinner with me." And Frankie was like, "Oh no." But she didn't feel like she could say no because just of the social mores, how is she going to turn down a white woman? So she goes to this restaurant and they sit at the counter and the waitress comes up and says, "I'm not going to serve Frankie." And, you can imagine the slurs. And Diane was like, "Well, but you served me and I am also a Negro. So what's the problem?" And violence ensues. And Frankie is like, right, because she's had none of this training. She is literally there just because Diane Nash plucked her off the street. So she's like, "I think I'll just start swinging back. Like, why wouldn't I?" Right? Which is such a human response. I heard her tell this story actually when Diane Nash was in town to be honored. I think it was last year or the year before. And she said she looked over and she saw this white guy getting the crap knocked out of him. And she thought, well, if he's willing to do that and be nonviolent for my people, then I will be nonviolent for my people. And so everybody else sitting in that diner, every other protester had had months of training. They had been, in church basements drilling, imagining, just role playing every scenario with people yelling at you and throwing things at you and pulling on you, teaching you how to stay still, to not react to what's happening to people who you've, come to love, who are being injured around you. She's gotten none of that. But in that moment, she made a decision to be a part of this. And when I saw her tell this story, she still had the cigarette burn on her arm that some woman during this confrontation gave her. And it's not like Frankie was ever a national hero. And I don't think that, her story is amazing, but I don't think she's very well known even locally. And I think that's one of the things, too, about wanting to have some kind of civil rights museum is we have the Civil Rights Room, which is a treasure at the downtown library, but it's a room. In terms of research, it's great. But in terms of having the space and time to tell you kind of a whole vision of this movement and to put it in the context of what was going on nationally or even what was going on in Nashville's history, it doesn't have the room. We don't have a central place for people to kind of come together, to have a docent who's like, okay, once you leave here, you should really go check out Fisk. Or once you leave here, you might want to head over to Fort Negley. That'll take you back, 100 years and kind of put you in the mindset of what was going on for these people's grandparents and great-grandparents. And there's so much good stuff happening here, but it's missing that central hub.
America's 250th anniversary is this year, and if you're looking for a meaningful way to experience the celebration right here in Tennessee, well, you have got to check out the Path of Glory at Andrew Jackson's Hermitage. Our flag is an iconic symbol of everything this country stands for. And right now, you can visit the Hermitage to stand amongst 1,776 full-sized American flags flying proud. 1776, baby. They'll host a dedication ceremony on May 22nd. And here's the extra powerful part. You can sponsor a flag in your name or in honor of a loved one. And when the event ends in mid-July, a flag will be sent straight to whoever you dedicated it to with a certificate of authenticity. 250 years ago, our founding fathers believed this country should be a place where everyone can enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That American ideal is still worth fighting for. And spending a day amongst the Path of Glory flags is a great way to think about our past, present, and hopes for our country's future. So go ahead, plan your visit, and sponsor a flag today at thehermitage.com. Hey Nashville, if you've ever put off a home project because it just felt like too much, I get it. The research, the scheduling, the disruption, it's a lot. But replacing your windows? Window Nation actually makes it really easy. Their crews have years of experience. They measure everything multiple times so it fits right the first time. And they can usually install your new windows in 1 day or less. 1 day, that's it. And you're not just getting convenience, you're getting quality. Window Nation has installed over 3 million windows, has a 96 customer satisfaction rating, and offers a lifetime warranty on their products. Plus, you can choose from over 1,500 styles and colors, so you're not stuck with something boring. Your home actually gets a glow up. And listen, this month is the time to do it. Window Nation's Buy 4 Windows, Get 4 Free sale is going on now. You can get 0 down and no payments or interest for 2 years. But hurry, sale ends soon. Don't wait to put an end to your window problems. Schedule a fast, free consultation now at windownation.com. Okay, so we know that there's a large civil rights museum in Memphis. There's one in Birmingham. Why isn't there one in Nashville?
This is such a good question, and I really don't understand it because every major city that was important to the civil rights movement, with the exception of us, has some kind of museum. I find it really confusing and embarrassing. I mean, we've got the witness walls downtown. You know what I mean? Like, you start to look around and you're like, well, we have these kinds of acknowledgments, but they're all like both there, but you also have to like know that they're there in order
They're almost like a treasure map. That's how I've always felt about our historic sites. Yes. And even street names after these people. You really have to be intentional. And I'm sure people come from all over the world, come to Nashville to celebrate this. But I can't speak for the people of the world, but I don't think they're coming to Nashville for this. They're obviously coming for music. That's how we've been marketing ourselves forever. But what then does that say about Nashville? Because it does feel like somebody out there has made this decision for our city not to have a civil rights museum.
When I first started looking into this, one of the reasons that I know that everybody else has a museum is because I was like, well, what are we giving up tourist-wise, right? Because I figured everybody has made the emotional case. Like, maybe we just need to make, like, the numeric case. Every single civil rights museum brings in at least $250,000 people a year, at least $1.5 million. And that's just at the museum. That is not counting, I stayed at a hotel, I had to eat dinner. So that's also bizarre that we're just leaving money on the table. And one of the things that I've been thinking about, there are not a lot of places left throughout the nation where you can go and stand where these people stood. Like, not just down at the courthouse, but like the churches that basically sheltered activists are still there. The pulpits that MLK spoke from are still there. You can, if you want, go worship in a church in North Nashville where all the people I named worshiped. In Nashville, you can go to these places. These churches are still around. TSU, obviously still here. Fisk, still here. Maybe you could have argued even 10 or 15 years ago that like, oh, that's not a safe neighborhood to send tourists to. That's not true anymore, thanks gentrification. And I think the people in the neighborhood are proud of what the people in the neighborhood have done and want to share that with others. And, for good reason. Like, why shouldn't you be proud that repeatedly over many generations, if you're a Black Nashvilleian, your story is a story of how do we get free? I think a lot about the fact that the first school that we had in Nashville for Black kids, both free kids and enslaved kids went there, which is one of the things, like, if I were, which I should not be, but if I were ever in charge of like the Civil Rights Museum in Nashville, one of the things I would really want to stress is that it's not like the civil rights movement came from outside. This was an organic movement that Black Nashville had been participating in basically from the moment that they got here. When Diane Nash came, when they dedicated the plaza to her and she spoke, and at the end of her talk, she said that she hoped that we all understood that they did this for us because they loved us, even though they didn't know us yet. It makes me cry to think about, but it also is so inspiring that it's like, yeah, this should be our relation to the future. Let's do things in Nashville for the people who are coming after us so that they have these inspiring stories. Why are we not telling our kids constantly, kids in Nashville changed the world?
Honestly, Betsy, I don't think I learned this in public school growing up here. It was all about the Hermitage, Andrew Jackson, how they lived in harmony together on the plantations,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
to hear this and hear how instrumental we were nationally, I wasn't taught that. I didn't know this.
I was talking to a parent this morning about they're like sixth graders going over to Memphis to the Civil Rights Museum. So they have to get up, they have to get on the bus at 6 in the morning, drive over 3 hours, hurry through their day, and then come back. And it's like, I completely believe, I 100% believe everybody should go see the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. But it is terrible that there's nothing for them to come see here. We need some business-minded person who loves history, who understands the importance of Nashville's role in the civil rights movement, to be like, oh, hey, we could do this and I could make money from it, so it would be worth my while to do it.
Has Nashville ever attempted to build a museum that honors this history?
Nashville has this terrible habit where it promises Black Nashville that they're going to get a museum of some sort. So the first time that it looked like it might actually be a real thing, they told them that there's going to be an African American history museum at the corner of Rosa Parks and Jefferson, where the State Museum is now. And then that fell apart, and they got as a consolation prize the African American Music Museum. But that's national, right? So it's like, well, you didn't get a Nashville-focused museum. They do good programming that is Nashville-flavored, but it's not what people were promised. And then when the Morris Memorial Building seemed like it was going to be available, the idea was that we could put some kind of African American museum in there, perhaps a civil rights museum, and then it just didn't happen. And I think another difficulty would be, like, it is really hard to go back to Black Nashville a third time and say, this time we mean it. This time, could you really drum up enthusiasm? Could you yet again come out and talk about why this is important? So, yeah, it's typical Nashville stuff. It's like we've got some stuff kind of all band-aided together that's like the best that we can do. And then on the other hand, we've made a bunch of promises that we know we can't fulfill.
And you're getting a sense from locals that we want this.
Yes. Yeah. And I think especially when Diane Nash came back, and we've had a lot of activity just between like the 60th anniversary of school desegregation, I think was a big eye opener. They invited the people who had desegregated Nashville schools back. They were only 66, right? Because they were first graders when it happened. So a lot of them, their parents were even still alive. So I think that really drove home for like people just didn't realize like, oh my gosh, that was really like only 2 seconds ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who did this are young old people, like, you know, they're only in their 60s. So I think that was kind of the start of Nashville kind of realizing like, oh my gosh, we still have people here who still have knowledge and stories. And out there in Nashville right now is somebody whose grandma or grandpa just died. And they're going through the house and they find, let's say, a box of receipts. And say those receipts are from like 1958 to 1968. And it's dinners, it's supplies, it's just anything that has to do with the civil rights movement, because their grandma or grandpa was like helping with just the daily task of what do people need to eat? Where are they going to stay? All this stuff, right? But if the person going through that box doesn't realize that's what those receipts are, that person is going to put that box in recycling.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to then laugh and be like, I can't believe grandma kept all those receipts. Why would you do that, right?
As a historian, does that just make you crazy?
It really does, because it's like, okay, even if we're not going to have a museum instantly, other than just hoping that people know that they can give that stuff to the civil rights room, what are we doing to take that off people's hands until we can do something with it? I feel like this is kind of the last best moment, like as people are still alive or have just died, when their families might be wanting to do something with this stuff but not knowing what they can do. The thing that really chills me as a historian is thinking that like we are, as a city, depending on a bunch of people in town holding on to stuff that they don't know what it is. There were kind of hard feelings after like 63. A lot of people who were in the civil rights movement in town stopped talking about it and haven't really talked about it. So their families are then surprised when they're like, wait, you marched? Like they don't know, right?
'Cause it really wasn't.
Right, because it just was, you know, like, well, we did that. Now we're going to, you know, go on with our lives. And this is a thing I really love about the Civil Rights Room, right, is they have those pictures from the banner and they've blown them up great big so that you can look and see if you recognize people's faces in the photos. You can say like, oh, hey, wait, that's my aunt. That's, you know. So I do think like having some kind of awareness drive where it's like, hey, if you have this stuff and you don't know what to do with it, but you know that it might, or you think it might be valuable. And I'm just sure people they've kept flyers, they've kept artifacts. And that's the thing is like, who even knows what might be out there? Having a museum isn't just about like showing off a collection. It is actually like the preservation of that collection. If we want to have these stories and we want to be able to tell them for future generations, like this is how you do it.
I think it's so telling about Nashville, the fact that the Woolworth Theater, this historic place for the civil rights movement, I was just looking at their website. You can see, I mean, it's packed full of events, but it's like the Shiners, which I haven't seen, but I've seen, you know, billboards for Shiners. Thunder from Down Under was there.
Yeah, who doesn't
as well.
want a mail strip review?
Yeah. I guess it's no longer there according to the website, which is a shame because honestly, I was going to take you, Betsy.
Right.
But they have a gallery open to the public from 4 to 5 o'clock where you can go and view beyond the counter.
An hour a week.
An hour a week. It's in partnership with the Downtown Library, which then I encourage everybody to go check it out. But I mean, that I think sums up exactly what Nashville's priorities are. They're taking this historic venue and doing that with it. It's always about money. And I think you made such a great point of like that we need to find this person who cares about this and has the money to do it.
Right. And sees that there is potentially money to be made,
Right.
Like,
exactly. There's more money to be made.
Yeah, let's bring in tourists. It's something that would benefit the city, but it will also be important to the region and to the state, I think.
Betsy, is there a story you'd like to leave us with?
I'll tell you another story that Diane Nash told that I was like, man. So a lot of the restaurants didn't want to integrate because they didn't think that people would come eat there if they saw that Black people were eating there. So the student movement went around to local white churches and asked all the grandmas to come have lunch with them. And many of them did. And so when people looked in the restaurant, they saw white people eating with Black people. They saw white women eating with Black people, right? And so it kind of showed like, no, look, this is fine. The world's not going to end. Like you don't want to focus too much on white people when it's the civil rights movement. But again, when we're telling the story of Nashville, if you think about this is 1960, the women who Diane Nash would have identified in these churches as being grandmas are going to be between like 60 and 80, which means that they are born in like 1900 to like 1880, which means their parents or grandparents, no farther back than that, were Confederates. These are people who were raised to benefit from Jim Crow and probably, honestly, were still casually racist. But when asked, they chose to be on the side of right. Again, like these are the kinds of stories we just need to be telling each other all the time. That no, we come together, we do these things. We're not trapped by our past. We are, in fact, able to be inspired by it.
Well, Betsy, this has really given us a lot to think about. If somebody is at home right now and they're listening and they have a lot of money and they feel that this is very important, email us at nashville@citycast.fm. But seriously, I know that was a little bit of a joke, but seriously, I think that this is something that we could really rally around and get together on, because what you just taught us is it is the people.
And I will say too, just as a plug for the Civil Rights Room, if you do have stuff from your grandma and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is important or not, or you maybe are like, I've never told this story before, but I want to share it, please get in touch with the Downtown Library. They are set up to do interviews. They can take stuff in. Even if we don't yet have a museum, there are people who work for the city who are trying to like carry the torch forward.
Thank you, Betsy. Really appreciate you coming and sharing these stories with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I love sharing them.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Want to support this show and get great perks? Become a CityCast Nashville neighbor today at membership.citycast.fm. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our CityCast Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!